Good evening. The Madison County Board of Education regular session for Thursday, March 3rd, 2022 is in session. Mr. Perkins, would you do the invocation?
Let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, we petition your throne of grace, understanding and recognizing that you are the omniscient God, the God who knows all, the omnipotent God, the God who is all-powerful, and the omnipresent God, you're everywhere at once. And all of those attributes, Lord, benefit us in that you come to fulfill the purposes within us, Lord, so that we might fulfill the purpose that you've called us to for our students. I ask in a special way, Lord, that you'll be in this place, that you would lead, guide, and direct all that we do, all that we say, all that we think. Let us, Lord, do those things that please you. Let us not have self in the way, but let us, Lord, do those things that benefit our students, our district, and our community as a whole. We ask, O Lord, that you would guide and direct our thoughts today. Guide and direct, Lord, the decisions that we make today. And help us, O Lord, to always seek your face in all the things that we do. Bless this district. Bless each board member, parent, teacher, faculty, and staff member of Madison County. In Jesus' name, the word made flesh, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Perkins.
I recommend approval of the agenda dated March 3rd, 2022.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the agenda dated March 3rd, 2022. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the minutes dated December the 14th, 16th, and January the 6th and 20th, 2022.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of minutes dated December 14th and 16th, 2021, and January 6th and 20th, 2022. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
It is indeed a privilege and an honor today to be here to recognize some of our teachers who have done exceptional, extraordinary work as it relates to being prepared to continue to service our students. National Board certification is a rigorous certification process, and the individuals who are here today, who are here to be recognized, have done a tremendous job in actually reaching that status. It is a certification that actually gives our students every tool that they need, gives our teachers every tool that they need to give our students the things that they need to function, to grow, and to develop at the highest possible level. I always say that individuals who seek board certification are visionaries. And they're looking beyond what is and looking at what our students can become, and they're prepping and preparing themselves to do just that. So I feel honored and blessed today to recognize 12 of our teachers in our district. But before I call them up one by one, I do want to recognize some individuals in the audience who have been pivotal in making this a reality within our district, but not just our district, Madison City as well as Huntsville City. And so I'm going to give the mic over to John Allen, who is the CEO of the Committee of 100, and after him, Stephanie Kelly, who is the Executive Director of the Schools Foundation, along with Bob Bernardo, who is the Executive Board President. And they have been pivotal in providing funding for our teachers. John?
Thank you so much, Superintendent. First and foremost, as CEO of the Committee of 100, we're a group of business leaders in the community, 294 of us, and we just applaud the work of you all in this effort. We stand beside you in this effort. It's an incredible task that you all have, all of our educators have, certainly in the last 2 years, and we just want our educators and our teachers to know that we as a business influence organization stand beside you. We're grateful for your work in the classroom, grateful for the work that you do for our students each and every day. And this National Board Certified Teacher Program, this initiative, Raise Your Hand, was really a bold and innovative idea, partnering with our friends at the Schools Foundation to gain the highest concentration of board-certified teachers in the country in Huntsville, Madison County. It's a bold initiative. It's long-standing. It's going to take years to do that. But you all are really the tip of the spear to help us drive that forward, because we know it drives achievement in the classroom. We believe that it's pivotal to our success as a community. For the work that we're trying to do in economic development, moving our entire community forward, it's just critical. And so just to let you know, we are proud of you all. We're proud of all of our teachers. We're grateful for you all and the work that you do. Thank you. And for us as an organization, we are quickly moving toward hopefully our funding goal, which is $1 million funding goal. Right now we're at $442,000 in the last year towards this effort of $1 million to certify another 500 teachers in all 3 systems, which is incredible. So it's a program that really has resounded with our business community, with our business leaders. They're supporting that in a big way. And so, again, we just really appreciate your hard work and effort. And we're here with you all through the long haul. And when we get to that point where we're the highest concentration in the land, we're going to have a great celebration of the achievements of all of our systems. So thank you for partnering with us, and really appreciate all the work that you do. Bob?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Kelly, and John said it very well, so I don't have much to add, but just to say congratulations to you. Thank you for inviting us this evening. We're very proud of you, and it just shows that you've gone above and beyond the duties that you're called to do daily in your jobs as teachers. That's a special calling. It's very important to the future of our community, and you've gone above and beyond and achieved this certification, and you're going to mold these kids even better than you would have before. So you're setting an example for your peers, and you're making a difference in our community, and we recognize that, and we just congratulate you.
And I'll add my congratulations as well. I know it takes a big time commitment. Professional development and national board certification is a big deal. And the big impact is on what you bring back to the classrooms in your schools and helping those students to grow, to excel, and to benefit from your continued learning. So we look forward to a whole stream of MBCTs coming through the system, and we're excited to be helping support that through the community donations. Thanks.
Thank you. And I don't want to leave this person out, because they have been so pivotal in working with our National Board Certified Teachers, individuals who are going through the process or working to go through the process for years. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Nancy Curry if she would stand so that everybody can see you. And Dr. Curry, she puts in long hours to work with anyone who is willing to go through the process. So we just want to thank her for her work too. So what I want to do, I'm going to call your name one by one. I'm going to start with the newly certified in December 2021. And if you would just, once your name is called, if you'd stand and then just come up. Ms. Nancy is going to give you the certificate that we have. And then we'll just take a picture with the board right up front. And then, of course, you'll marshal out to take the picture out in the lobby with your torch. So we're going to start with our first candidate is Danielle Hutchison. Congratulations. Sarah Adams. Congratulations. Allison Schwartz. Sarah Posey. Mary Hovick. Anna Huffman. Tisha Douglas. Whitney Collier. Yes, ma'am, you can.
We're welcoming, these are newly certified teachers as of December. We're welcoming Whitney to 52, our number's up to 52, we have 52 national board certified teachers in this system. And so we welcome you and thank you for bringing not only yourself, but your wonderful talent with your certification with
And now for the recertified in December, Leslie Sedberry. Dr. Amanda Lemons. Brandy Glenn. Diane Marsh. Ann Johnson. All right, so we're gonna take a picture. I think the board, we can just stay right up here and just stand up.
Stand up?
Yeah.
All right. Look over here.
Watch yourself. Yeah, they're gonna take the pictures now. We'll let them go out first. It's all yours.
All right, we are on item 3 of our agenda, request to address the board. And before we start, we want to go ahead and do a attendance check, see how these individuals here. Francine Slate, okay. Ellie Cowherd, okay. Mr. Kyle Brickhouse, all right. Dathan Black, okay. And Belinda Newell. All right, I'm going to read the statement real quick and we'll go ahead and get started. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. In the event that you wish to address the board on an issue involving the general reputation, character, physical condition, professional competence, mental health, or some instance job performance of an individual, or confidential student information, the board will hear your comments in executive session. If you're unsure whether your comments should be made in executive session, please see Board Attorney Cynthia Thompson. All right, we'll start with the first on our list, Francine Slate. Timer on this.
Go ahead. Okay. Today we are at a level 0, but where will we be in 2 weeks or even the beginning of next school year? The issue of forced masking is still being brought up to you because you are using our children as chess pieces in your political monetary game. Some of you have stated that ending this mask mandate cannot be brought to the board for a vote until the superintendent recommends it. Board members may ask to add it to the agenda, but Mr. Perkins has the right to deny it. We are aware that many of you are not running again to keep your seat on this board. However, that does not excuse any of you from fulfilling your initial oath to Madison County. If you as board members are unable to get the most important topic to be discussed at the school board meetings because Mr. Perkins disapproves with it, then at this point, what good is the school board for Madison County? Per Madison County School Board policy, the meetings will be conducted in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, and I confirm this with Mr. Reynolds. The basic requirement for approval of an action to pass through the school board should be a majority vote. These are direct quotes from the last board meeting. Sherry Rucker admitted and that in her opinion, a mistake had been made by forcing mask mandates. Evidence for the masks is now non-existent. We aren't doing anything good for our kids forcing them to mask up. David Weiss stated he agrees, and he was fine with voting to stop the mandate now and asked what Mr. Brooks' thoughts were. Brian Brooks stated he agrees, he doesn't even wear a mask. Alan Perkins stated that the plan had been voted on previously and was already agreed on. What is wrong with this picture? 3 out of 5 board members stated publicly that they agreed it was time to end mask mandates, but you as a board members were just silenced. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall stated because proof of immunization cannot be required as a condition of attendance, policies such as mandating masks or proof of negative COVID test results could not be enforced, and that he will stand behind the parents if they choose to file suit. I am here as one of those parents. My husband and I are no longer asking or requesting for you to end this mask mandate. We are ending it. From now on, regardless of the COVID positive threshold, my son will be attending school without a mask. Need I remind you that my son was the one who was given a used, dirty mask in school because they thought it was a smart idea to reuse lost and found face masks. When he questioned the cleanliness of it, he was told to put it back on and go to class. My son wasn't going to argue with an adult at school because we're raising him better than that. However, as his parents, we have no problem standing up for him, and we intend to do so. I am holding the board members responsible for each situation these kids have had to endure. And just so you know, when some of the parents asked to speak tonight, they were met with comments from your secretaries such as, well, you know parents who want masks are contacting us as well. We don't need to remind you that it is every parent's right to have an opinion on this matter, especially when it comes to their kids. However, it is no one's right to try and intimidate parents into giving up their right to speak up at this board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Light. Ms. Ally Cowherd. You're right.
On 2-3, Ms. Rucker acknowledged that evidence for masks is non-existent. She asked to continue the discussion when Ms. Bates returned, and we all remembered the conversation that followed. It was clear then that the majority of the board was ready to end the mask mandate. Everyone points to Mr. Perkins and says that he has to bring matters forward for a vote, so I and others contacted Mr. Perkins and several of you, and I heard back from about half, or exactly half. This is a problem because the majority of the board agreed that it was time to move on. There should have been a vote ASAP, but the vote never came, or did it? We don't know. We just know that we went to level 0 on 216. Again, everyone points to Mr. Perkins and said that he has to bring matters forward for a vote. But Mr. Reynolds says differently. The board operates under Robert's Rules of Order. Anything else comes across as Mr. Perkins holding the board hostage and makes us wonder what the point of board members are if you're all at the mercy of whoever the superintendent is. This needs to be addressed and explained. Also, many of us have the understanding that at some point around the beginning of COVID, board members relinquished power to Mr. Perkins. This also needs to be addressed and explained, and if true, this is also a problem. At this point, many are concerned that the board isn't functioning in a completely honest, healthy, and transparent way. We have been trying for months to get parents to come and talk to you, but it is very hard to convince them that their thoughts and voices matter, and it's very frustrating. Part of this concern is due to unanswered questions and different answers to simple questions, particularly with COVID. Parents should be able to question the color of the walls in here and get responses from our board members and the superintendent. It should not be hard for us to discuss with you in a public forum. Our eyes have been opened, and we know that we must be actively involved because things can easily go unnoticed and undetected. Regarding COVID, enough. We have known from the very beginning that the only science that mattered here and the only science that masks and mandates were based on is the science of politics. And several of us have talked about it here before. That being said, I wouldn't be shocked if we never hear of COVID again because the political powers that be all but ditched it earlier this week. We're at a level 0, but there still needs to be a vote on mask mandates and Ready, Set, Forward. It's time for it to go. It's time for the board to acknowledge as a whole that COVID isn't a threat to the vast majority of people, especially our children. It's time for you as a whole to acknowledge that you don't have the right to make medical decisions for our kids. No more masks, no more mandates, no more plans, and no more politics. You're not going to have perfect, so try to do the best you can until you can do better. That is a quote from Winsome Earl Sears, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. The time has come, and you can do better.
Thank you, Ms. Cowherd. Mr. Kyle Burkhouse. You can begin.
I'm sorry, what?
You can begin.
Okay. Hey, it's good to see more of your faces today. I can tell you some of you are tracking the latest political science, so I'm happy to see that. So I wanted to address something from the last board meeting. Mr. Curry, when 3 board members expressed support for scrapping the Ready, Set, Forward plan, you said, as a board, I think we have to operate with consistency and intentionality, and that it gave you pause to change mid-stride, and that our community expects some consistency, intentionality to look at the facts. First, I hope I can alleviate some of your fears about the community expecting consistency. I think many parents here would agree that's not a whole lot we expect. We expect school to be canceled for rain a lot. We expect the class schedule for upper-level students to change from year to year. We expect school start times to vary from year to year. Recently, we expect to get a call that's saying, hey, our kids are going to be forced to wear masks, or they're going to be forced to go virtual at the drop of a hat. We expect to learn how to do math different. We expect the grading, how we grade, to change. All that's coming. We know that. So that's not a huge concern. Consistency is not a huge concern that we have. Second, this board changed the Ready, Set, Forward plan last fall and amended the wording during the meeting which this concern about consistency was brought up. So I think it's okay that this board can make changes to this plan. Furthermore, you don't continue to support something when you know it's wrong and when the majority of the board is advocating against it. You don't continue to double down. Third, the board has never looked at the facts regarding the measures that went into this plan. What you did was listen to elected bureaucrats that told you what to do and denied the facts that many of these parents presented to you. So tonight, I'm calling for this board to terminate the Ready, Set, Forward plan in its entirety, again, just like we did the last time we were here. If you still can't see that we've been lied to about this, just ask yourself, why did last week the president extended the COVID national emergency until the summertime, and then this week all but declared the victory over COVID? Does that make sense to anybody? Can you honestly say it does? Why do we have more cases and deaths after a massive vaccine rollout? Does that make sense to anybody? You don't have to be a doctor. That doesn't add up. You realize the governor of New York filed suit to keep masks on the kids, and then 2 weeks later, this happened last month, 2 weeks later, she lifted the mandates for the state. But only 2 weeks prior, she was going to court to keep them on their kids. This has nothing to do with health and safety. This is all about politics. We've gone from Rona to Russia. It's obvious, okay?
Thank you, Mr.
Can't see
Burgos.
that. I'm sorry, what?
Thank you. Thank you.
Is that my time?
Mr. Dathan Black? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully this is going to put the Ready, Set, Forward plan to rest. What I've just handed you is some reading material regarding the policies you've instituted in our district over the last 2 years. What you actually have in your hand is a formal letter of intent to file against your bond issuing company for violating several federal, state, and even international laws, so consider yourself served. These laws you have broken are a direct violation of constitutional and human rights that we hold so dear as a free society. As someone who also took an oath to defend this Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, almost 25 years ago, I would be failing my oath by not coming here today. Over the last 2 years, your policies have wreaked absolute havoc on our schools and our children's learning capacity. While you may believe your intentions were good, and in the spirit of doing the best for the most, they have ultimately failed. As a parent and a taxpayer in this community, I have an obligation to help correct things when the people we elect fail to do so. I am here not only to speak on behalf of my child, who undoubtedly has experienced mental and physical damage from these policies related to this fake pandemic, but I'm also here to speak for those less fortunate and do not have a voice. Child mental depression and suicides are up 3,000% since this began. Early childhood development markers have moved so bad with child speech, our own CDC this past 2 weeks moved the goalpost for kids, basically requiring them to be able to speak 50 words by 24 months. Now it's 30 months. Why is that? Obviously, it's because there's a pandemic of learning due to masks. We moved to this community specifically because at the time, the high school was in the top 20 of the state academically. We were pretty excited about that. Now we sit at 58th. I'm talking about Buckhorn. So it's quite obvious none of you are concerned with the education of our kids, and if we don't change course now, it will be too late. We demand answers on this low performance, but ultimately, I'm looking right at the collective problem of low performance. I'm calling to an end of this Ready, Set, Forward plan in its entirety, effective immediately, as well as a list of other demands you will see in the attached papers that I put on your desk. To the board, you are currently serving as a collective body without surety bonds, which is a direct violation of Alabama law. So for all of you, consider this being put on notice while we figure out why. I don't know why, and maybe somebody can answer it for me. In closing, I'd like to leave you a quote. The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. And one path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender or submission. That's from JFK.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Ms. Belinda Newell.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Perkins, you were served via UPS on February 24th with my letter of intent to file a claim against your bond. You failed to respond, and my efforts to schedule a private meeting with you was denied. You left me no other choice but to move forward with my claim. It was submitted yesterday. In my past presentations, I spoke about how you all had a moral and ethical duty to consider the source, look at the patterns of misguidance, and do your own unbiased research into the source's unethical work history and conflict of interest connections before you followed their guidance or accepted their statistical data. The director of the CDC admitted that hospitals had a financial incentive to inflate COVID data. What makes our school systems, who receive federal funding as an incentive to adopt safe return to school plan based on specific safety guidelines and recommendations established by the CDC, any different than the hospitals? Those specific safety recommendations included wearing masks, social distancing, contact tracing, quarantine, and collaboration with the state, local departments, diagnostic and screening testing, and efforts to provide vaccinations to school communities. The board has based all of their decisions off of the COVID spread and percentage points, because that's what we've all heard. That has no validity to it whatsoever. Rice University discovered false positive COVID tests after moving classes online. FDA issued a safety letter about potential for false positive results for COVID. Washington State Attorney General filed a lawsuit against the Illinois-based COVID-19 testing company for improperly handling tests and providing fake results. The Center of COVID Control Headquarters, who oversees a chain of COVID-19 testing pop-up nationwide, was raided by the FBI and is facing a slew of state and federal investigations. The company has paid more than $124 million from the federal government to do so. Repeated COVID tests to return to work or school has been counted more than one time. Now, if a person's diagnosed and is required to quarantine and repeat another test before they can return back to work or school, that should be counted one time. But no, these health agencies have counted additional positive COVID tests on the same person multiple times. My brother-in-law is a nurse, just like me. But he's a nurse in Florida. And there was a lady that was tested 15 times in a row, 15 times. They counted 15 cases of COVID instead of one. That's gone on nationwide. After my experience working in the hospital setting since 2005, false documentation for profit happens all the time. There have been countless reports from people nationwide being diagnosed with COVID without symptoms. Let me make this very clear to everyone in this room. It is impossible to be diagnosed with such a life-threatening virus and have absolutely no symptoms whatsoever. Now, a person may, their symptoms may not be as severe as someone with, some underlying health conditions, but they're still going to have recognizable symptoms. The no symptom claim was used to cover up for the false positives being diagnosed so they can inflate the COVID numbers for profit. The CDC, who the board and the ADPH chose to follow, is truly a corrupt and dangerous organization. I urge all of you to research the history of corruption by the CDC, because I'd be up here all night, and because that's how long and detailed their history of corruption is. Parents have been trying to
Thank you,
get
Ms.
you to
Newell.
take the CDC blinders off. I know, but that interrupted me when that went off, so I'd like to finish this last sentence. Parents have been trying to get you to take your CDC blinders off since 2020. So in the end, you can't play victim, you can't point fingers, you can't claim that you didn't know because you did know, and you made the choice to follow the misguidance for profit.
Thank you, Ms. Newell. Okay. Mr. Perkins?
Informational items, Ms. Witt. The 2022-23 Code of Conduct.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to take a few minutes to go through some of the updates and changes for next year's Code of Conduct. There are some copies up there of last year's if you needed it, and you should have received this in your email today as well. Just one of the first things we're going to change is the attendance codes. We no longer Power School no longer uses the 1X, 2X, 6X, all the different X codes with numbers. It's all letter codes, so there's really no changes except to the verbiage in there and the abbreviations and how they're labeled. So that's. And there are several of those, but that's how they're changed. So that's that. The administrator approval used to be called principal's prior permission. It's, again, the same code, same guidelines. It's just a different name for it. Okay. The next change was instituted to cover us and give a little more structure and, weight to these social media TikTok challenges. So we added an additional statement in there about vandalism and property destruction, and that students reported for participation in these challenges that encourage property damage, are subject to discipline as well. So one of the main things that we heard from principals on this was that in the Code of Conduct, there's a $100 kind of threshold before it becomes a hearing. And what we were hearing for them is there were so many different things going on at one time. Yes, it wasn't a $100 thing each time, but the time that it took their custodians and their teachers and the time they spent investigating and things like that. So just kind of gives us a little bit more weight where that's concerned, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the upcoming. Also, so the next thing is just some changes to the actual local code violations. And these are the ones we use to when we assign discipline and different consequences to students. So we want to remove to include a board employee to make that a class 2 or higher. Right now, it's a local code you can strike an employee or, put your hands on an employee and local code. And when we're talking about local code, you can see the consequences. So somebody could get a conference or detention for that. So we're just trying to give some more weight to that. Do a better job of supporting our teachers in that. There are some concerns from admins about the elementary admins, but the SIR manual, the state SIR manual says you're always supposed to take age and maturity level into account when you're looking at different consequences, assigning consequences and violations to students. So we're covered there as well. Another thing I added on each of these, used to those said down at the bottom where it says consequences of local code violations, that used to just say local code violations. So we added consequences for, so people just kind of clarify what those are. Then the next one is on Class 2 intermediate. Well, no, that's still back to Class 1. Sorry about that. Class 1 minor violations. So again, just may or may not involve physical harm or injury, just adding language and to removing to include a board employee, because an individual or a person, I mean, is a board employee, so that kind of all goes under that, so that language is not necessary there anyway. And then also under S26-1, profane, obscene language or manifestations, just adding or removing racially motivated from a level 1 and upping that to a level 2, just as a school system taking a stronger stance on racially motivated language and profanity and toward other students. So. And then the next one, Class 2 intermediate violations. So just adding digital in there, because obviously we got a lot of digital communication going on, just making sure that's covered. Another thing that's brand new that we added is harassment of another person. It's just, because we get a lot of this, and so just kind of cover every instance that we can think of. We've had everything that we've added here is usually in response to either requests or, when I started working on this, I met with several principals, I met with the C6 group, I met with teachers, I met with several people, I've talked to parents. So just kind of adjusting things, and as experiences came about, I've been in this position for 5 months and experienced a lot of different things that may or may not have been covered in the Code of Conduct. So just adding this harassment covers some of those things that were not originally covered. Then the Class 3 major violations. And so this is something that Ms. Thompson and I are still working on, so I don't want to, this is not set in stone, because she's got to look at the statute and just make sure that all of this language matches. So I'm going to skip that S05-3 for now, because we're going to come back to that the next meeting. And then criminal mischief, again, this is where that vandalism blurb that I talked about earlier comes in, and it just adding to include participation in social media or other challenges that encourage the destruction or theft of school or personal property, and making that a Class 3. All right, and page 2120, Class 3 major violations again. Again, just adding that digital right there. And then also something that came about this year is fireworks. Initially, we thought fireworks may fall under the category of explosives, but it actually does not. The state SIR manual calls fireworks a weapon unless it causes damage, unless the fire causes a damage, and then it's Class 4 arson. So just added fireworks there, so that was, just give a little more clarity. And then the next one, this, we just updated that harassment. That harassment was already in there. We already had a Class 3 harassment. We added the Class 2 harassment, and then I updated the language to match what's in the state SIR manual, okay? So that's all it is. It pretty much says the same thing, but it's just added a few different aspects of that other definition. All right, and then criminal violations, these are Class 4s. This is the only addition here, is just adding when we defacing property, if it involves any kind of hate speech or racially motivated language or symbols, then that bumps it to a Class 4. The next sentence, or the next addition, just added suspended out of school to these guidelines, because it was kind of always something that was just understood that if you were, or it was thought that it was understood if you were suspended out of school, then you weren't allowed to attend any functions, after school functions, any functions on school property during the length of that suspension. But we don't want to infer that. We just want to make sure that it's clear in our code of conduct and policy. And this is just a removal of a word. If you'll notice, we removed corporal punishment last year, but we kept it as an example, so that's just a typo, and so we're just removing that out of as an example because we don't do that anymore. And medication, Nurse M. Sand went through the language and just tried to update it to make it make more sense and more in line with our board policy. So just a couple of words changed is all that's there. And then our acceptable use policy, just adding images in, and then also down here on S16-3, before, if you look at sentence B, transmitting obscene, abusive, sexually explicit, or threatening images and/or language was just as a Class 2, but we also moved that, also copied and put it as a Class 3 as well, so that we have some leeway there, depending on the circumstances. This section was added on data governance just to be in compliance with compliance monitor. During compliance monitoring, it came out that we needed a blurb about data governance in our code of conduct. So that's why that is there. And then again, the definitions for harassment, just updating that to match what's in the state SIR manual. And then on the last one, just again, updating language and making the actual form live in the document, just trying to make it another way to make that form easily accessible to parents and anyone who needs to report bullying and harassment. So just updating those, making those live links on the website, and then in the actual paper document, in the booklet, the harassment form is already in there, but we also want to make sure that it's just easily available to anybody who needs to report that. Okay? And then just updating the language to match what our forms are called. Questions?
I don't know which slide it was.
Okay.
One where it was the first one about the racial stuff.
Okay. Right here.
So that is about language, but the one that you replaced was about physically.
Okay, so I think you're referring, are you thinking about the one at the end? So there was one about vandalism, and that was separate. So 26-1, okay, so right now, the way it stands in our code of conduct is racially motivated is in a Class 1 and a Class 2. We're trying to make it where it is Class 2 or above. So we're removing it from Class 1. So if you use language towards somebody that's racially motivated in nature, then it's automatically a Class 2.
It's already there. You didn't have to add it.
Right, right. It's already there. We just didn't have to add it. We're just removing it from here. It bumps it to a Class 2. Any other questions?
So I was looking at the AUP slide,
Okay.
and on the B one, S16-2B and 16-3B, what's the determinant? What makes you determine if that needs to rise from a 2 to a 3 or vice
Well,
versa?
I think it's individual situations. Like, for instance, an image of someone, say, changing their school profile picture to them holding a gun, and it's kind of threatening in manner or some kind of threat, just anything, because we had something similar like that happen this year. And so just trying to cover, I would think, weapons, anything very extremely sexually explicit.
So it's just a determination you all make with the group. You guys look at it and make that judgment call on a 2 or a 3?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because we don't want to lock ourselves into anything, but just because it's something new comes up all the time. And so we want to make sure that we're able to go either way that it needs to go and not held to one certain thing. Anything else?
Yeah, I got a question about the corporal punishment. I'll be the one to get everybody mad at me, so that'll be fine. Why are we getting rid of it? I mean, is that an Alabama state law, or is it just something that we're trying to get away from? Or because I feel like we need it back in school because our PACE Academy is getting full, isn't it?
So corporal punishment was removed how many years ago?
3 years ago?
About 3
I
years
know,
ago.
but we still have the language. I mean,
Yeah, that was an
It was
example.
listed as an example. We're not removing it. It's already been removed. It's just, because it says right here that we don't do that, but this was used as an example. It's just a typo, like they took out corporal punishment. We don't use it anymore, but we forgot to take it out of the examples. 'Cause it
I know, but like, is it against a law in Alabama or anything, or is it just?
I think that it's research-based, there's research that backs it, and there were some, I seem to recall, I wasn't in this position, but watching that board meeting several years ago, and it was something having to do, they took a vote, and it was research-based, and, it's just not,
Yeah, it was a board
not
vote.
best practice.
It was not unanimous.
It was not.
I remember.
It was not unanimous. I think there was some discussion about potential legal concerns if a kid got hurt, administering corporal punishment, the levels of the district liability. I know that was brought up as well at that time. Certainly, it's something we can rediscuss and we can talk about, have it on the agenda, discuss it.
Yeah, I'm not sitting there advocating for it, but I'm just saying, I mean, you threaten a kid with a paddling, I think they'll like it a little better than going home and playing video games. That's just me, but that's my question.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Witt.
Thanks, Ms. Witt. Administrative items. Item A, I recommend the approval of the MOU with the Madison County Commission for Career Tech Center Co-op as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the MOU with Madison County Commission for CTC Co-op. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item B, I recommend approval of the January 2022 financial statements and payments of bills as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the January 2022 financial statement and payment of bills. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item C, I recommend approval of the bids as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of bids as submitted. Any discussion?
So when nobody bids, do we have a formal policy to follow?
State bid law, policy, law, it's part of the law. If we receive no bids, and we've gone through the bid process, then we're open then for negotiations
And you
with the vendor.
negotiate with who do you negotiate?
We negotiate with the vendors that have been responsive, those that were sent the bid. So we still keep it competitive, but we just work with them and negotiate a price.
Okay.
Because you don't want to rebid it when you're not going to get a response.
Right, but so you go and you negotiate or attempt to with everybody that you,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Are we buying a concessions trailer? Is that one of the things in the bids?
Yes, sir. That's Meridianville Middle School. They use their TVA money that's earmarked for, it goes to the schools, earmarked for athletics and facilities. And they have asked or requested that we bid for them to have it's a concession that's mobile,
Right.
actually. So we went through the bid process because it was over $15,000. And no one responded to the bid, so I'm sorry, I didn't even realize I wasn't speaking in the mic.
So they're gonna use it for like, I would assume sporting events, like,
Yes, sir.
Baseball.
Baseball.
okay.
Baseball. Yeah, where the baseball field is currently, it's kind of in a sunken area. And we looked at it several years ago, building a facility, a structure. Cost at that time was significant. And so this is probably our best option at this point. I would love to have a building, but it's just with their TVA funds, it's just not possible. And the district at this point does not fund athletic facilities. So this is the best option for them at this time. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item D, I recommend approval of the 612 English Language Arts textbook adoption as submitted.
Motion?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the 612 English Language Arts textbook adoption. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item E, I recommend approval of the Supervisor of Federal Programs job description as submitted.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the Supervisor of Federal Programs job description. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item F, I recommend approval of the preschool resource specialist job description as submitted.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the preschool resource specialist job description. Any discussion? Just as a reminder, all these job description changes are to be in alignment with, help me with the name of it,
State.
federal programs?
Yes.
Federal programs.
Yeah, federal programs. All of these, they're already jobs that we have. We just had to make sure the job description matched, so we had to go back and make adjustments to the description.
These are the ones we heard about last board meeting.
Last board
Correct.
meeting.
So that's all of them.
Yep.
Yes.
They're really not changing anything, just wording in the names
Yeah, that's
and
it.
some of the description.
Yes.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item G, I recommend approval of the Administrative Assistant of Federal Programs job description as submitted.
Motion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the Administrative Assistant of Federal Programs job description. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item H, I recommend approval of the Bookkeeper for Federal Programs job description as submitted.
Motion?
Second.
A motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the Bookkeeper for Federal Programs job description. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item I, I recommend approval of the Federal Programs Resource Specialist job description as submitted.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the Federal Programs Resource Specialist job description. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item J, I recommend approval of the Mental Health Services Coordinator job description as submitted.
Motion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the Mental Health Services Coordinator job description. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item K, I recommend approval of the contracts for services as submitted.
Motion? A second?
That was tough.
Your pick.
I'll second. All right.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of contracts for services as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item L, I recommend approval of the personnel items and addendum as submitted.
Motion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of personnel items and addendum as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Item M, I recommend approval of supplemental contracts and discontinued contracts as submitted.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion, excuse me, I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of supplemental contracts and discontinuance of contracts as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that is the end of our administrative items on the agenda. Ms. Thompson, we have an executive session for student matter. So I need a motion to go into executive session for student matter.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll recess for about 5 minutes and go into executive session.